This episode of the Morning Tempo podcast is powered by ConvertKit. More than just an email marketing company, ConvertKit is focused on landing pages too, giving beginner creators the ability to build email subscriber lists. I've been using ConvertKit since early 2016. Their new free plan allows creators to make unlimited landing pages and forms. Choose from multiple templates, add personalization and design, include an incentive email, create a thank you page, manage subscribers, and send broadcast emails. Plus, you'll get access to the ConvertKit community page where you can join groups, follow topics, post questions, comments, and interact with other creators. To connect with your audience and make a living doing the work you love with ConvertKit, go to morningtempo.com/ConvertKit. Let's do the show. Welcome to another episode. I'm your host, Roberto Hernandez. On this podcast, the Morning Tempo podcast, I have conversations with business owners and the entrepreneurial with a slant toward creativity. My guest for this episode is Stacey Bedford, CEO at Bandzoogle. As Stacey puts it, if you're unfamiliar with Bandzoogle, it is the easiest all-in-one professional website platform for musicians and bands. She started with the company over 10 years ago in tech support, and she was early in her career working on processes and systems for the company. She got promoted eventually to operations manager. Then she gains the trust of the entire team at Bandzoogle, and boom, she's wearing the CEO pants. Having worked with a few startups in Silicon Valley, I was really struck by how customer-first Stacey is and really how customer-first Bandzoogle is. I don't know if I should go as far as to say it's rare, but it's not everywhere. A lot of startups are really scrambling for profitability, and it just really sounds like Bandzoogle has always focused on the customer first, and it is working well for them. I think she's entered a new period of her career where she can serve a new audience, an audience that needs or should explore the distributed workforce concept. She's definitely got that down. Here's me and Stacey Bedford of Bandzoogle. Has much changed for you since all this pandemic craziness ensued? Well, I know that you're doing lots of special things for your customers, but has it highly impacted you guys at all? Because it seems like it wouldn't, but...
Yeah, to be honest, for us, the pandemic has had a positive effect on our growth because artists will rely on tools online to sell and to interact with their fans even more than ever. However, personally, it's been a bigger change. So we've always been a remote company. So we've been really lucky on that end.
That's cool.
Yeah, so we didn't have to make that huge adjustment to remote life, and we're an older company, so we were comfortable with that change. But a lot of us are working from home with children right now, so that is interesting. I have three young boys myself, so we've just really had to adapt our expectations and our productivity, and just be understanding that we're not working in the same situation that we normally are right now.
For those who don't know your story, so you're going on about roughly 12 years since you started with the company, and I understand you started in tech support, and I was hoping that you could spend a couple of minutes telling listeners about your journey to CEO of Bandzoogle.
Sure. So I've been with the company for a while, like you mentioned. When I first started out at Bandzoogle, I was the front line. I was the only support person in the company. We had a few thousand customers at the time, and we had 2 developers, and the founder was really involved in the business. So we were a really small team. And the interesting thing about being part of a startup is there's so much opportunity to add value. And I think because everybody in our small team really cared about our customer base and the success of our customers, we were really focused on adding value for them. And in a small company, there's so many things that you can do and so many opportunities to learn about different parts of the business. So in that first year that I was at Bandzoogle, our growth started really taking off. We're very customer service oriented. I got to know our customers really well. They were on a first name basis with me. We provided support by live chat, so I got to talk to customers in real time. And the interesting thing, and I'm going to skip ahead, is even now, we provide customer support in the same way. So we're still talking to our customers in real time. We're still doing proactive website reviews. We're still responding to inquiries in the same time. And I love that our values have really been consistent throughout that time. So when I was working, when I started out in customer support, I had an opportunity to really establish how we were going to provide customer support. Build, and as we grew, I got to build the team that I wanted to have, and make sure that everybody was trained to do exactly the same thing. And as our company grew, our founder was looking at how well the customer service team was running. And the other teams were also growing. So we had communications, we had developers, we had designers at the time, and he wanted me to take all of the practices that were working really well for the support team and apply those practices to the other teams at Bandzoogle. We have a great group of people, but obviously working remote, it's a very unique situation. So if you can take some operations and really highlight what's working well for one team and apply those to other teams, that's when we started seeing a lot more productivity and efficiencies on our team. And just as a whole, we're all getting along really well because we're working well together. So at that time, I'd been promoted to director of operations. So I made the jump from customer support customer support worker to customer support manager, then to operations. While I was working on operations, we had a CEO at the time. This was a few, maybe 5 years ago or 6 years, maybe 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he was great. He had a lot of industry connections, and we worked together to grow and understand our customer base. And he went to work at Bandcamp after a while. And our founder realized that he wasn't a people person, and that wasn't the position that he wanted to do in the company. And Bandzoogle is all about, has always been about growing the team that we have and just allowing people to fall where they're most effective. So he really took a chance on me and said, the team trusts you. You've had success in the operations. You built a whole team from the ground up, and he offered me the CEO role. So that's basically, that's my 12-year journey in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love it because you started, as you said, the tech support person. And with 4,000 customers, it sounds a little daunting, but as you talk about it, it sounds like it was, maybe not cake, but you managed it pretty well and slowly amassed a team, the team that you wanted, and one that was able to support some growth. So amazing. And my favorite part about it, I mean, yes, it took some time, but my favorite part about it is, of course, where you started and where you are today. So you're you're going on 2 years into your role as CEO, is that right?
Yeah, I'll be starting my 3rd year soon, actually. Yeah.
Wow, so that went by fast, probably.
Yeah, it feels like it's only been a few days, but the really cool thing about that is that in the 3 years that I've been CEO, Bandzoogle has grown about 90%. So it's really nice to look back at those metrics and see the effect that Chris trusting me with the team has had, and how everybody has been working together to grow the company during that short time that feels like a few days, but it's really been 3 years now.
Well, 90% growth. I wanted to say, dude, you're crushing it. That's really great. Congratulations. Something you said as you were telling the story, the words customer first quickly came out, and I was kind of reflecting on some startups I've been involved in, and from my vantage point, they were scrambling to get revenue, and customers seemed very much to be an afterthought, to the point that everything they did was reactive. And I'm wondering, and maybe you can shed some insight into this, but I'm wondering, was that a product of the culture from early on, or was there something else? Maybe, I mean, and have you observed or run across companies that are like this that are not as nearly as customer centric as you see your own company, and do you attribute it to culture or something else?
I think it has a big part of our culture and our values. And one of the main reasons for that is because pretty much everyone that works for Bandzoogle is an artist themselves. So we're building out a product that we would actually like to use as artists. So it's just fine grained. It's intrinsic in how we do all of our work. So I would say Bandzoogle has been around for a long time, and we've seen a lot of companies, especially in the music space, that are not really putting the customers first. And sure, you're going to come up with an idea and it might take off, but if you're not listening to your customer base, you're not going to have legs in the industry. And even if that wasn't something that we had as a thought that we should be doing, like if it's just something that you should always be prioritizing. Whenever I think about customer success, I always think about employee success too, because to me they're hand in hand. So if you're treating your staff well, they're going to treat your customers well. And for us, we're representing artists, and that means our staff and our customers alike.
Well, it makes complete sense, and everyone being an artist at the company, a music artist or maybe an creative artist of some other variety, it's as though you're collectively scratching your own itch, so to speak, as they say in the startup world, which oddly enough made me think of something I read about you, which is, and I don't know if it's still true today, but that you would spend an hour or so a week beekeeping. And I was thinking of this phrase that popped in my head about the collective, and suddenly I'm thinking about bees and beehives. But do you still do that?
I do. I always talk about how it's important to have life outside of work and work-life balance, and that's so important to us. And making sure that our staff have life outside of work. I still do beekeeping. I think that it's really interesting how, there's a lot of parallels between Bandzoogle and beekeeping. It's kind of like a gentle monarchy where everybody is working towards a collective goal. And it's funny that you brought that up because, so we do have, we spend a lot of energy on our pastimes. And I do feel like what you do outside of work really improves what you bring to work. And I think that it's really important. There's a lot of high-tech companies. They're not remote. They're not set up as remote companies, but the whole goal is so that you never leave the office. Like they have like chefs and gyms and game rooms, and they just make it a place that you never want to leave. But it's kind of like you're progressing as a human on an island and you have no external influences. So I think it's really important to have your own hobbies outside of work, and mine is beekeeping.
How did you become interested in that?
Well, I mentioned earlier that I have 3 kids, so I don't get sick very often. But a couple of years ago, I had a sick day, and one of my kids just happened to ask me a question about bees from some video game that they were playing, and I wanted to give them a real answer. So I was there, I was laid up, I was sick, and I just started researching bees so that I could give them the right answers to their questions. And I couldn't stop reading about it. I just got infatuated with the whole thing. And within a week, I was purchasing beekeeping equipment. So that's where it all started.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that there was a parallel, because there was one in my head, and I thought, I don't know if this is going to go anywhere, but yeah, that's fun that it you clearly take some things from the hobby into real life and probably lots more. So, for those who are interested in the journey that we talked about already, is there any one thing that you can really attribute your achievement of becoming CEO at Bandzoogle to, or has it really just been a lot of different things that culminated?
I would say that a lot of my success and my personal success has to do with always trying to provide value in any given situation. I've seen a lot of different people in the workplace, and a lot of times, the whole idea is that they're centered on their own personal growth, but you really need to get outside of your own head, and you need to think about what is the situation. You need to read the room, and you need to see how you could provide value to that situation. So I carry that with me in everything that I do. I always try to see, you just have to take ego out of the whole situation, and you need to think what needs to be done in this situation and how can I help. So I think that way of that perspective has really helped me move ahead professionally, which is a little ironic because the idea was to think about how I could be of value in the situation and not my own advancement.
I like it. And it appears, looking from the outside, very recently. So I'm a user of the platform and a proud affiliate, as you may know.
Oh.
And one of your team members, Dave Cool, was a guest somewhat recently on my Unstarving Musician podcast, and I'm struggling suddenly to remember exactly at that particular time why I had reached out. But he had just published a new blog post because we were at the very beginning of the pandemic, and he just published something about ways that musicians can continue to make ends meet during these unusual times. Mm-hmm. And in that short time, now we're recording this on May 8th, and I guess this was maybe a couple of months ago. I don't have the date in front of me that we actually spoke, but I purposefully published that episode more rapidly than usual. It just seemed appropriate, but and I was going to have a point to this. This lost my train of thought, but I think I was going to say that, in that short time since I spoke with him, I've seen all these things that your company is doing to try and help your customers out, and probably a lot of stuff I don't see that you're doing for those outside your customer base. But you've been opening up features to all subscribers that were, for instance, maybe for your second tier subscribers, and you it seems that you rapidly rolled out some new features to help musicians adapt to there's a new way of trying to do the business of music. So it's as though your value reading the room and delivering value in any given moment is permeating through the company, and maybe that was also something that culturally was there and you helped to nurture, perhaps.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. One thing that Bandzoogle has always been really good at is adapting to the climate. In the music industry, things are always changing. If Bandzoogle wasn't always evolving to adapt to the situation that we're in, we wouldn't be alive today. When Bandzoogle started out, social media was not even a thing, and digital distribution didn't exist. So we're always having to make sure that our tools are relevant for artists today, and that includes the pandemic. So in the last month, we know that a lot of our artists were touring artists, and obviously that's something that's not safe at the moment. But we wanted to make sure that our artists were still able to provide to their fans. So in the last month, we've launched virtual ticket sales. So if you want to do live streaming, you can sell tickets to your fans. It works with our mailing list feature that we also provide, and we made this available across all of the tiers during the pandemic. So we also launched this week. We haven't promoted it yet. I don't know if Dave's going to be upset that I'm mentioning it, but we also just launched a tip jar feature. And this was just a first milestone. So there's gonna be more components that we're adding in the next week or so. But this will allow artists, if they're doing virtual live streaming, or if they're doing something where they want to be able to accept tips, they'll be able to do it from their website now. And like all of our other tools, they're 100% commission free.
That's cool. In a couple of ways, you're becoming more and more a one-stop shop for music artists because there are so many great third-party tools, right, that we can plug into a WordPress website or whatever. And more, you're empowering your customers to do everything right there. So I love that. And yes, hopefully Dave won't mind we mentioned it here. We'll have a couple days at least before we get this one released out to the wild. So maybe that'll buy you some time.
Yeah, another interesting thing that's been going on is our communications team that Dave handles. He's been doing such an incredible job. There's been a lot of, our blog has been a great resources for artists during the pandemic about like pivoting how they offer, because our artists, like, you have to think about even your music as a small business and reacting to these times. So our team has been, it's been a really interesting activity for us because all of the staff really like to contribute to our blog too. We've been sharing articles about how we work as a remote team and how it's okay to not be productive during this time and just cope. And Dave's been posting a lot of stuff about resources for artists during the pandemic, and not all of it is related to Bandzoogle tools. And I think that it's okay to reach out in your community and in your music circle and make sure that your customers know all the resources that are available to them. And that's been a good success in our blogs so far in the last month.
Yeah, absolutely. And I forgot to mention, but the online ticket sales thing was something. So I'm going to do something new for the Unstarving Musician, the other podcast that I do, and that is to put out a weekly video tip or video tips that my social media assistant can work with. And I identified as one of the first few I was going to do as this feature and some of the ones surrounding it. So great idea. Again, just sort of making everything available right there. I think that's amazing.
That's great. We've noticed a huge jump in our customer sales too. We hit $62 million in customer sales, I think, this week. And I've noticed that our customers are selling about $250,000 every week or so. So the interesting thing about that is that we have a lot more power sellers as customers, and they're using our e-commerce tools for their business more so now than ever because it's the only way that they can do things during the pandemic. And we've been really listening to how they're using those tools and what they need from them. So we've been doing a lot of smaller updates too that we don't necessarily promote. But we have this new tool to be able to export your sales and categorize them. And it's helpful during tax time since most people are managing their inventory and their businesses more online.
Sure, and all the musicians that geek out on analytics and stuff, they can sort of put their own sales data together. So, well, I was going to say, and kind of had a related comment or question on my list here that, so I've been a user for a pretty short time, and I took the leap to be an affiliate. I knew of your product. I'd kind of been watching it, and I got contacted by Dave. And so I took a leap to do it before I ever became a user. Although I knew I was going to, I just had to unravel some problems I had going on with unstarvingmusician.com, where I had this other domain was actually the primary domain for it. So I had to sort of rip a couple of domains apart, if you know what I mean, in order to move over. And plus, I'm a long-time WordPress designer, and as I say in some of the plugs on the Unstarving Musician, like was really no reason for me to switch to Bandzoogle, but I wanted to try it. Basically for those that are listening to me talk about why they should check it out. I wanted to let them know firsthand that it was a good platform. But in the short time that I've been with you, so I think when I first signed up as an affiliate, it was kind of like, we power, websites for thousands of musicians. And, now you're rapidly approaching 100,000 or more websites, and your sales have just been ratcheting up very fast. I have a number here. You said 62 million this week. I had a number here printed of 60 million. So things are clearly moving very, very rapidly. So it's been fun to watch. And the number of features that have come out is incredible. I haven't, personally played with a lot of them yet, but everything I have touched works very well. And by the way, the tech support team is great. I've just emailed them questions a couple of times, and I think I've done chat, and they're super responsive. which is something that you guys brag about, and I try to brag about for you. So, good job.
The support team holds a special place in my heart, so I appreciate that.
And what I would say they're lucky that you come from that background, because certainly for many years now, it sort of falls to the wayside with companies, and getting rapid responses is hard. Like, with my credit card company.
I know. Yeah. And but when I was building out the support team, and now that I'm leading the team, I really wanted to create a company life and a culture that I'd be happy for my own kids to be part of. So I always keep that in mind when I'm dealing with anything from customer issues to HR discussions. I wanted to make sure that there's somewhere that everybody's time and their ideas are respected. And I think that it's important to talk about too, because Bandzoogle is a living example of how it's possible to do the right thing, treat your staff properly, and still be pretty successful. And then I think when you stop focusing on the bottom line and you prioritize adding value for everybody, then everything else will move in the right direction too.
Well, this is a good time for me to read something that I read in an interview. So I believe I'm quoting you, but I put quotes here. It may just be because I was reading it from an interview with Balance the Grind. And that interview, and I believe you said, afternoons at Bandzoogle are free of internal meetings, so yes, you must have said this. I spend an hour going over our metrics and adjusting our plans, read through member staff feedback, _, plan out ways to enhance our staff happiness and support our workplace culture, and meet with other businesses. That's pretty cool. And you just kind of you've said a lot of things that support that quote. You've talked a lot about the culture, the team, and what they mean. And that's cool. So it brings me to what I was going to ask you about, or ask you to talk about, which is, operating a distributed workforce and working within a distributed workforce for so long. Are you experiencing requests or getting requests to share your secrets and experience with companies that really are not good at this yet?
I am a lot, and it's funny because I often work behind closed doors, and as you know, we're a distributed company, and Dave is the one who usually does these interviews for us, and he's very comfortable with them, and he's amazing at them. So I've been getting a lot of questions about how to work as a remote team, or a distributed team, and a lot of questions for help with this. And for me, it's really funny because I've been doing it for such a long time. I have to extract things that I think are common sense and just a given, and realize that this is brand new to so many people. And those things that are common sense for me, it's because I've been doing them for 12 years now. And that's something that we've learned over time through trial and error that works really well. So even though I'm doing it every single day, there's a lot of value that can come from talking about that. Like for 18 years, Bandzoogle has really had the luxury of time to settle into remote life and getting it working as efficiently and painlessly as possible. But during this pandemic, everyone is just being thrown into the lifestyle, and it's such a big challenge. It's really sink or swim for a lot of companies right now. But I'm hoping that I'll be able to provide some assistance to companies and interviewers that are asking me. And I hope that when we come out on the other side of this, that everyone realizes that there's so many benefits to remote life that will change that, and it'll change how businesses operate. Because there's just so many good things about it. And for Bandzoogle, it's been the only way that we would ever want to do things. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a lot to learn from that.
Sure. And a quick story on how you ended up doing this interview and not Dave. I originally, not knowing what was going on at the company at the time, I originally said, I want to speak to Chris Vinson. And so Dave got back to me on behalf of the company and said, so Chris has kind of stepped back. And now I'm suddenly remembering the story of why Dave and I ended up talking about his recent blog post. But we have this new CEO, Stacey Bedford, but by the way, he might have even said, I usually do these kind of things, and by the way, I just put out this blog post on how musicians can continue to make money, some ideas for them on how they can continue to make money, and it was a perfect a perfect fit for what I was looking for. I think I'd even alluded to, I was kind of looking for a little bit of that anyway. But I believe as we spoke, he'd kind of dropped that maybe we can get Stacey on your business podcast, which is where I had requested. I think that Chris come and chat with me. So that's how you ended up here.
Okay, thanks for the backstory.
Yeah. So I don't know if there is a one thing. Maybe there's a small handful of things, but for companies that are either, maybe it's a couple sets of tips that you can give, but for companies that are sort of have been thrust into this working remotely, what would you say to them? And then for new businesses that are starting out with this grand opportunity now ahead of them to just start out remotely, what would you say to them?
If I had to summarize it, I would say make sure to have the proper tools for communication and documentation. Because everything is in the cloud and everything is, when you're working remotely, it's almost like your company is in thin air. You want to make sure that you're able to communicate efficiently and properly as a team. You want to make sure that you have some way to document and follow through on the output of your staff. You don't want to have to ask people what they're doing all the time. It feels like micromanaging, and it's really bad for employee morale. So you want to make sure that you have the right tools in place for communication and you set the expectations there. I think those are the most important things. For Bandzoogle, some tools that we find really effective for communication are Slack and Basecamp. Slack it's our virtual office, and we have it organized in a very specific way that supports our different teams. And Basecamp, we use that as a project management organization tool. So we encourage our staff to share ideas, and we just make sure that there's a place for that so that it's not disruptive. The other thing I would say is that it's really important to not expect your staff to work on a 24/7 schedule just because you're always at your office, which is your house. So make sure that if you notice that staff are hanging around too long, or if they're never clocking out, make sure to tell them to leave. And don't send them emails and off hours and expect a response. So you really have to establish some ground rules with everybody. In the beginning, it's going to seem like prolific and like you're flourishing because everybody is working all the time, but that's not sustainable. So I would say make sure that you're communicating, have the proper tools that you need in place, and make sure that you have a good balance and that you're honoring your staff's time, their personal time.
That's great. Great advice. And thanks for sharing the tools. That was going to be my next question. Your favorite go-to tools. And what an insightful comment about monitoring, if you happen to, I hate to use the word monitoring, right? But, sort of monitoring the health of your staff and how much time they're putting in. Are they doing a little more than they should be for their own well-being, and trying to nudge them in the right direction of taking care of themselves? Because I know that is hard for a lot of companies, but hopefully it's not just online lip service, but hopefully companies are realizing more and more how important it is that everybody's kind of in a good state of mind.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that too is at Bandzoogle, it's really important to foster a sense of togetherness for the team, and that's a challenge when you're distributed. So I would say that the Bandzoogle does this in a few ways. Full-time staffers, we have an annual retreat where we all get together for a few days. So we do that, but we also make sure to have different events that we hold throughout the year. And sometimes those are social challenges. Sometimes those are off topic, just video calls with the staff. We do this thing every holiday season where we call it like a Secret Santa. Mm-hmm. And we pull names from a hat, and then we mail each other gifts, and then we open them on a holiday party and video together, and we have to guess who sent them. And it's just these quirky little things that we do that really make us a real team. We used to do a running challenge where we would see how many kilometers people ran per week, and there was a prize at the end. But we realized that wasn't really inclusive, so we started making sleeping challenges. Like, it's important to get a feel for your staff and things that would interest them and make them feel involved, and really put an effort on just growing your company culture and your sense of togetherness as a remote team.
I read that you do karaoke with some of these retreats. Is that still a thing?
It is. Yeah, it's amazing because I play guitar, and I love karaoke so much, but you have to realize that on the Bandzoogle team, there's 3 opera singers. So there's like an incredible amount of singing talent, and they're really nice and they carry me through the songs. But we really love doing things like that. At our last retreat, we did karaoke, murder mystery. We do a bunch of different exercises like that. And because a lot of us are artists, oftentimes when we get together, like a jam session will break out, and it just promotes like a really nice sense of togetherness on the team.
So you mentioned the full-timers in the retreats, implying that you have some part-timers. How much of the team is part-time, and is that kind of permanent part-time, or is it a fluctuating thing?
We don't have that many part-timers right now. Usually what happens is, and this is more about like just strategies to grow your business, but when you're working and I have these metrics that I use to make decisions on our business. And whenever we're hiring, I like to make sure that we have a certain number of customer support representatives per customer support representatives per 5,000 customers. Mm-hmm. So usually when we're hiring, our support team goes through like a 3-month training process that's paid. And we do a probationary period where they're working part-time, and we're just making sure that they're a good fit for the company, and the quality of their responses is what our customers would expect of them. And usually within a couple of years, they're offered a full-time position. We do have a few staff. So usually the part-timers are on the support team, and they're newer staff that we're evaluating. But we also have quite a few support staff that are touring musicians, and they like to maintain a part-time schedule, or they're digital nomads, so they're constantly traveling, and they basically want to work enough to pay for their next plane ticket. So we have like a really big variety of lifestyles at Bandzoogle. And I think that oftentimes, because we're hiring artists, a part-time schedule will really let them continue to be active musicians and have a steady paycheck.
Maybe you've already experienced this, and if not, I guess I want to ask you, do you think if you were on a speaking circuit about, on a topic of operating a remote or distributed workforce, that many people, let's say, your attendees are a lot of startup founders or C staffers, do you think that many companies might find that a difficult prospect to have such a diverse kind of background, like everything from digital nomad to touring musician?
I think when you're looking at what your challenges are as a business owner or a business head, like you really need to look at what the actual like it looks like the challenges that you have, like a diverse staff and lifestyle to deal with, but really I think you need to focus on like what the actual challenge, like what is the roadblock. And for that, creating an environment that supports those, like a wide variety of people, is actually the challenge. Like hiring all these different types of people can add so much value to the company because you're getting so many different perspectives. And especially when, like in a place like Bandzoogle, where we have a fairly flat org chart, where we want everybody to contribute to our product development and have input on any part of the company that they're interested in. Like we're set up for that, a diverse work group to add so much value there. So if your challenge of having a diverse work group is you feel like it's going to interfere with like actually running the business and like onboarding people, I think those are the things that you have to figure out more than anything. So I would say if I'm talking to a group of C-level people about the challenges in having a diverse work group, I would say it's that you need to set your company up to be able to support that. And it's not as complicated as it sounds.
Yeah, and it sounds like to do otherwise is to be self-limiting as a company, because I'm guessing that you and your company have discovered unbelievable talent in these little diverse lifestyles. Had you sort of used that as any of that diversity as any kind of criteria, which I know, when I say it that way, it sounds like, well, nobody does that, right? But but when you start getting concerned about lifestyle fitting with travel schedules or whatever, because I'm a touring musician or whatever the case may be, about that not working, it sounds like it could be self-limiting in a way to the pool of potential talent that one could have otherwise.
It really does. And if you just set ground rules about your expectations and how like changes in scheduling is going to work, everything else becomes easy. So when you're hiring somebody who, for example, is a touring musician, you just set ground rules about how much lead time you need before their availability is established. And it's no different than working with other shift workers. And also just making sure that if you're a digital nomad and you're traveling, that you always have access to high-speed internet. So those are criteria that they have to think about when they're traveling. So the onus is not always on the company, but as long as you set clear expectations and everybody follows through, it actually works out quite well, because you have staff that appreciate a good job with a good company, and they make sure that they're considerate about the time that they put in and the notice that they give you.
All right. I think this one might be of value. I hope it is to listeners, but for one of these companies or one of these audience participants in the imaginary, well, it's not so imaginary. I think it's probably going to happen to you, but you're giving your talk to the C-staffs and the founders out there about operating a distributed workforce. Our workspace, I guess defining workspace at home, is that an important piece of it when you're as part of the, I guess, the handbook on new hires? Like, part of the expectation is whether you're on in the C staff or you're a brand new person, part-timer in tech support, are there sort of ground rules or expectations that you set for workspace at home?
No, this isn't something. So this is a good question, because we give our staff a lot of freedom about how they work, as long as they're contributing what we expect them to. We don't micromanage their setup. So as long as they have a high-speed internet connection, they clock in when they're supposed to, and they're providing the value that they're expected, then we don't care about what their environment is, because that doesn't matter to us, really. Like, all that matters is their productivity, right? And if they're happy employees, and if they're making your customers happy. So how they get that done does not matter to me.
And is it even a topic of conversation among staffers? Because I would imagine that sometimes maybe it's a challenge for a staffer now and again, and does the team ever share things that they do with one another that have, they've discovered to be super helpful in their their workspace, their office space, or whether it's kind of virtual or imaginary versus, I have a separate office when the doors are closed. Everyone knows that's I'm off limits or whatever it is.
I would say that it's more a topic now, because a lot of us are working from home with family, which we didn't normally do before. But we do get asked this when Bandzoogle is interviewed. We often get asked what our remote spaces look like, and we have posts about that. And you can find pictures of our home offices, and that part is always fun for us, because oftentimes you'll see pictures just full of gear and we have we have a lot of different work setups. I think there's a couple of pictures of people working on like their deck, like that sort of thing. But we do share tips, and because most of the staff at Bandzoogle, like the average tenure is about 7 years. So staff stay with us on average for 7 years. So these conversations don't come up that often because we know each other very well. We've gotten used to our setups. But once in a while, we'll have somebody who has like an injury and they're like, hey, what is your standing desk setup? Like they'll ask questions about that. Or I've been getting like these back pains. How do you deal with that? And so like, we'll start like a walking challenge or something like that. But in terms of like discussion around what works for us more when we're working remotely, most people, I would say most people on the team have like a dedicated office space in their home, but there's a couple of people who like they prefer to, like if they've been working for Bandzoogle for quite a while and they're finding that they need to just be around people more often, we do cover remote work, like co-working space, so that they can be around other people. And that's come up a few times. Like we have some people who have been at Bandzoogle for 10 years and they're like, I just need to be outside of my house for a couple of years. So we'll cover co-working space for them. So we do, I find after like quite a few years, some people will want to mix up their working environment, and that's something that we support.
That's cool. And
yeah.
You mentioned the one change that's happened, and that's suddenly everyone, several of you who weren't before have family at home now, who are sort of forced at home right now. So that is a big change. Have you guys as a company had to do anything special in the area of internal support to kind of with morale or anything from time to time, or is everybody hanging in, just like rolling with it? Has it been a thing?
Yeah, so we deal with it kind of on a case-by-case basis. So if somebody is, like we have a couple of staffers who have very young children at home and both parents are working from home full-time. So they just, we work with them and they adjust their schedules so that they're working off hours of their partners. We realize that this isn't a forever issue. So and everybody is doing the best that they can. It's kind of like, it's equivalent to war times right now. It's trying to work during a pandemic with your family at home is a very special situation. So we definitely support staff who need to make changes to their schedule. And if they're not able to put in the same number of hours that they normally are, then we adjust our expectations too. As a whole, Bandzoogle has never been about documenting exactly how many days you take off and that sort of thing. We're pretty open-minded about that, and we've always been. So handling our staff during a pandemic is really no different. And whenever we make decisions about how to handle different issues, we think about having a longer-term relationship with those staffers. It's so valuable to keep your staff happy, and just making short-sighted decisions on how to handle those situations, it's not worth the trouble. So you want to make sure that anytime you're making calls on what your staff needs, that you're considering a long-term relationship. So in the pandemic, if the staff is not able to work a full 8 hours a day, or if they're parenting at the same time, you just have to be flexible with that sort of thing. I remember a few years ago we had a team meetup, and two of our staffers at the time were married, and they're still married. Mm-hmm. And one of them had just had a baby, and we're having this full team meeting, and we had this corner set up with toys for their toddler, and we're running the meeting, and everyone is just passing around the toddler to entertain him so that the parents could both work and participate because they wanted to. And that's the kind of company we are.
That's great. Well, it sounds like the company was built for these unusual circumstances that we're in. And I hope that this experience in chatting with me today is the beginning of a big speaking gig for you, because I think a lot of companies would benefit from talking to you about these things and many other things that I didn't even think to ask you about today. But thanks again. It's been great talking with you.
Thank you very much. It's been nice talking to you too.
Thanks again for listening. If you like what you heard today, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. This podcast is made possible by the support of listeners just like you. If you're interested in supporting the podcast, visit morningtempo.com/crowd sponsor. Among other things you'll find there is a way to join the Morning Tempo email list for insiders who want to know what I'm learning from other business owners and entrepreneurs that I speak and work with, including those you hear on this podcast. Morning Tempo insiders get an occasional email from me with business insights, recommendations, hacks, and anything else I come across that could help you in your creative entrepreneurial journey. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. Until next time. Hey there, just one more thing before you go. Now that you know a little bit more about Bandzoogle, you should also know that I'm always ranting to musicians about getting their website together. I'm going to talk to you as though you're a musician for a moment. Maybe you're not, but you may know one, so let me just pretend you are one, whether you are or not. Listen, you cannot control your social media property. The social media companies control that, but you can control your website. Plus, a legitimate website makes you look like a legitimate, serious musician, singer, songwriter, composer, performer, creator of whatever kind of musical things that you have. If you don't yet have a solid website as a musician, check out Bandzoogle. It was created by musicians for musicians. I'm a longtime WordPress designer, so there really was not any reason for me to switch over, but I did. I wanted to see it for myself, and you know what? It is as easy to use as it gets, and you don't have to worry about all that maintenance and care stuff that comes along with having your own website. The features and support are both incredible. See for yourself. Go to bandzoogle.com to start your 30-day free trial and use the promo code RABONZO to get 15% off your first year. Plans start at just $8.29 a month. It's bandzoogle.com, promo code RABONZO, ROBONZO, to start your free trial today. Or just pass that message on to your favorite musician.